Center Circle Podcast, your home of ASMG TV information and all that fun stuff. It's been a minute. Larry Weaver, Andre Bomar. Let's talk about the fall 2024 season as we started talking about it, and then, we got a little busy. It was kind of a lot going on in that season. We look at Georgia as we love it so much. Once again, Kalanji Pro Profile wins the regular season trophy and wins the playoffs to go on to the Nationals. I think that Bruno Kalanji and his crew did a really, really good job. And we saw Dre late in the season. He brought those old names back, Tony
Yeah,
Tientes and the Kareem Tamimis, and it really shot a rocket. They were doing great, and then that was that first week that they brought them back was their only loss to Georgia Revolution.
yeah. I mean, it was one of those things we talked about before the season, and we were looking at, well, who's going to be a favorite? And I brought up Kalanji per profile because of the way that they went out of the national championship the previous week, previous season rather, and how focused they seemed going into this season. They didn't get involved in the other competitions. They brought back some key players, including Kareem Tamimi, who was a standout player for them. Kalen Kalanji is one of the youth players, and the manager's son actually has really shown a lot. And of course, Anthony Sumo ended up being the Golden Boot winner, and so they seem to be really, in my mind, one of the favorites. But you can never count out teams like Dalton United, Georgia Revolution, who also went out maybe unexpectedly the previous season, and they wanted to make a notice too. But then, I think we'll get into some of the surprises that occurred in this season as well. So, and of course, lest we forget Potros FC, who are the defending champions of the division. So there was plenty of competition going into this season, and but I had kind of tagged Kalanji as one of the favorites, and I looked to them to come back and challenge a little bit better than they did last season in the national playoffs, if they were able to get through the division playoffs, which they did.
Yeah, and one of the little asterisks that we had at the beginning of the season was the fact that Henry Playtez left Kalanji, Lionel Sakui takes over. We're like, I don't know what's going to happen. Then he goes on and wins the Golden Glove Award and is the best keeper for the fall season. So, like Kalanji, same as it ever was. What is old is new once again, and they move on. Unfortunately, they hit the freight train that was Soda City. We'll talk about that later. Dalton United, that's changed a little bit. They ended up second. They kind of stumbled a little bit. They had three draws and a loss. Of course, that loss being to Kalachi Pro Profile. But some changes there coming in for next season.
Yeah, yeah, and going back to the fall season, I think Dalton United were hard done by this schedule at the end of the season. Um, Arguably, they could have challenged Kalanji for the division title, but they also were in. I think they were the only Georgia conference in the U.S. Open Cup, and they got to the third qualifying round. But that caused a lot of fixture congestion for them. That in the latter part of the season, to the point where they were playing in one weekend. They played a Saturday and a Sunday. They were playing the top teams in the division in the last few weeks of the season, and I just think they just ran out of steam. And losing heavily to Kalanji at the very end there, but they just couldn't get the results that they needed to finally get over the hump there. But now, of course, we know Kiko Rodriguez was their manager and owner from the previous season, did a great job getting them to where they're going. But I tell you what, Larry, they have a new manager now, a new owner who's been with the team um, for many years now, and he stepped up to take on the management role there, Jose Gonzalez. And I think that with that coming, um, there's a new, I guess, urgency for that club, because unlike in past seasons, they are now putting in a reserve team in Division One. They're also looking to develop a youth academy, and this is something that I had talked about earlier that they were missing. because that team is starting to get a little long in the tooth with some of their key players, and they need that support from the academy. And I think Coach Gonzalez is one that identifies that, and he has ambitions this season to challenge for the division, but also build a foundation and a club for the future.
Yeah, you look at that Dalton squad, Bittencourt left and you weren't quite sure what was going to happen on that defensive line. Valenciano, the Saldana brothers, you had all those players that were coming in. You also have Francisco Medina. You had these players that we're used to seeing season after season after season, and we haven't been seeing an influx of newer players in that Dalton squad. And they're going up, not, being up there in the Northwest region. You've also got the likes of North Georgia United, who has been able to have a little bit of a youth surgence in that same area. And you could see as the season went on exactly what you were saying. I think they played 3 or 4 games in that last 10 days, and they just ran out of gas as that season went on. They really need to bring in some youth into Dalton United to really spark it. I know it's up there. We talked
Oh
to
yeah.
Jay, we've talked to our partner, Jason Longshore about it many times. There is a lot of potential youth players in that Dalton region. It's just a matter of if they can grasp them.
Well, and I tell you what, Larry, the competition for them is North Georgia United, who were a revelation in this past season. This is a team that in the spring season ended up in the bottom, basically, and that they were threatened with relegation. But fortunately for them, there was a shakeup in the Premier that allowed them to stay. Long story short, and they took full advantage of that, finishing in the playoffs and doing quite well. And but for some controversial refereeing in that game against in the playoffs, they could have gone even further. But yeah, I think that the competition for players is going to be very hot and heavy up there in the North Georgia area near Tennessee, because you do have both Dalton and North Georgia in the same area. Of course, North Georgia in the Calhoun area. They also have a prolific attacking squad there, with a player who won the Golden Boot the previous season, the spring season, and a runner-up, basically in the fall season. And I think that they are set really to really compete up there, not only with Dalton United for players and honors, but in the division itself. And I expect them to return and challenge the top teams there. And Coach Jonathan Torres has done a great, and he's an owner as well. He's done a great job of putting this together. And I just see him going from strength to strength coming into the spring 2025 season.
Yeah, I've been giving Emmanuel Lum his flowers for seasons. And if it wasn't for that last minute push by Anthony Sumo,
Yeah.
Emmanuel would have had another Golden Boot trophy. And got to give credit to Coach K for North
Oh
Georgia
yeah.
United. He came in expecting to be in Division One, earned the right to give another chance at Premier, had to modify his season a little bit. You look at that first meeting when they had with Kalaji Pro Profile there at Shiloh Stadium, and he tried a different formation and absolutely got taken to task by Kalanji. And, he said that night with us as we were leaving, I learned a lot tonight. And they did exceptionally well. They ended 8-3-2, made it into the playoffs, made it to the finals. Unfortunately, lost again to Kalanji in the playoff finals. I have nothing but credit. He earned the uh, Coach of the Year award, minus a little bit of a controversy that we could always get into if we want to. Uh, that being said, another team that did exceptionally well this season and fought for the title there for a bit was Georgia Revolution.
Yeah, yeah, another team that I think is one to watch for the spring season. But yeah, they were another team that was challenging up there. But for losing, of course, another key point that we haven't mentioned about the way that the tiebreakers are, and it affects the competition, is that they switched the tiebreaker for teams that are, even on points, from goal difference to head to head. That made a difference in the placing of these teams, and that's going to be a significant thing going forward. That which puts more onus on individual matchups that happen during the season. Games are going to mean more now because you can't come back later and just by virtue of scoring a lot of goals get yourself back in the picture. You have to win your games as you go along, and so that's going to be interesting. That affected Georgia Revolution too, but they're right up there with them, and they're going to be a contender again. Very strong academy they have there, great professional coaching. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to reload and get set for this coming spring season.
Yeah, we'll skip over fifth place for just one moment. Potros FC, they ended sixth. Uh, they struggled because they had some staff changing coming into the season, staff changing during the season. So they were a team that was in flux throughout the season. They still made it into the playoffs. They still got a lot more to do to get back where they were in that spring season.
Yeah, and it's funny that player Mark Bonneau, another player that could have won the Golden Boot this past season. Of course, Sumo at Kalanji had that hat trick at the last day, and jumped ahead of Emmanuel Long from North Georgia and Bernot here at Portos. But yeah, a well organized team, but had a lot of had a very slow start to the season. Changes in coaches a couple of times during the season, and really that affected their attack on the sort of defending their division title. But they're going to be there now that they have a solid foundation built on what they accomplished last season. Still some unknowns there because they do have to come back and retain those players. But I think that they're a quality organization that has gone from strength to strength from season to season. So I expect them to be in the mix. I don't know if they're going to have enough in the spring season to make that surprise like they did in the past spring season, and win it all. But they definitely have the organization that could do it if everything falls correctly for them.
Absolutely. And then you look at another team that also went through coaching changes was FC Birmingham. With they struggled early in the season, parted ways with Coach Grigul. They went to their longtime veteran defender Josh Martinez to be the coach, and the team just flourished under him.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar in a lot of ways to Potros. Some of the challenges they had, and they had the additional issue of their venue being a problem. They had a couple of different venues they were trying to play at. There seems to be a lot of problems there in Alabama with the lower leagues and teams that finding facilities that meet the standards that are needed for Premier. They're having some of that again for this coming spring season. They're trying to find an alternate place. They're not going to be at the same venue as they had last year or last season, where they had to do a lot of work to get it up to standard. And now the city and the school system there has taken the rug out from under them. And so now they have another place in mind. It does meet the standards, but again, you're talking about another big change. But they do have. I think they're going to go with Josh again. He's probably going to take that on, probably more of a staffer instead of a player in the coming season. Time will tell. But they're a lot like Potros. They have the talent, they have the organization. They just have a lot of challenges and hurdles they have to overcome to get themselves into that competition for the division title. But they should safely, along with Potros, make the playoffs. But again, there's so much talent top to bottom in this division. I can say that now, but as time goes on, you never know.
Absolutely. Another team that was in the playoffs and was brand new was Fountain City FC. Came in with a lot of hype from Division One and learned really quickly that going into the Premier League is a whole other level.
Yeah, I found City. I like this club. Gage Joyner there running that club. Probably one of the more well-supported teams and integrated into the community than we have in the entire division. And it's a young team. They have a lot of stressing on the youth development, which is commendable for them because they still made the playoffs with that. But it- I think that they're going to have a struggle coming into the spring season. They are going to continue to go with that youth element, but again, just like Portros, just like FC Birmingham, a well-run club, a well-supported club. Those are intangibles that can make a difference. I see them, challenging for a playoff spot. We'll have to see how it goes as the season goes on, but a team to watch out for sure.
Two teams that did well, ended mid table. Georgia Athletic, UMA. They had struggles throughout the season of just getting performance out of the matches. UMA struggled with not having Tony Kim in the starting lineup for most of the season as he was off with college duties. And Georgia Athletic, one of the things I will say about Georgia Athletic is most of their attack comes from Mbamio. When Obamio is not receiving the ball or if he's not in the lineup, Georgia Athletic really struggle.
Yeah, I mean, Bamio is the point man for them, but they do have a solid midfield that really has helped them throughout the season. The big issue for them this past season is they had to forfeit a game that had they had originally won through a technicality with their roster. They had an illegal player that was on their roster, and after the investigation, it was found that it was a guilty sentence for them, which caused them to lose that game and be fined heavily. But they still only just missed the playoffs by 1 point. Just think, if they hadn't had that forfeit, they probably would have made the playoffs last season. And I'm sure there's a lot of thoughts from the players and the staff there that, hey, we're going to come in gangbusters this season, prove our point that we deserve to be here, and improve upon that for the next season. So they're going to be battling it out, I think, for one of those playoff spots. Plenty of talent, like you say, Mbamio is going to be probably one of the top picks to go for a golden boot for the spring season. So that'll be a player to watch out for. Hopefully they retain him. That's the thing about this level. Sometimes these players move around, but as far as we know, he's going to be back and probably a key part of their attack. So yeah, a team to watch. Another team to watch, UMA FC. I think that if I have to choose a dark horse in the spring season to make the playoffs, I think it's going to be UMAFC for the sole purposes they're going to have a lot of availability from players that were missing for large parts of the fall season. I don't know the status of Tony Kim. He was up for the MLS draft. He went undrafted, but he's also has the responsibilities for school, and so we'll have to wait and see what Coach Andrew does, not only with Tony but with the rest of his attacking crew. But a good young club, fantastic, probably one of the better academies, youth academies in the division. But we'll see what happens when it starts out. But that's going to be my dark horse. I think they're going to improve greatly over the last season.
And a team that's down there in the Southwest, they got a little bit of a lifeline when it comes to player availability with the announcement that Legends FC is disbanding. So they have a little bit more of a pool to pull from in that LaGrange area. That's the other thing that Fountain City has to fight with now that Columbus Elite are coming into the Premier Division. You got a lot of teams down, or a lot of players down there in that Columbus area that are going to fight for. But moving on to a team that needs to really prove itself after this fall season and into the spring season is Albion SC. They only got 2 wins this fall season, and they absolutely struggled.
Yeah, an enigma. Albion SC, strong club. Um, the only criticism I would have about them is they don't seem to really be taking the competition as seriously as they could be, and I think that cost them a lot in this past season. Having the proper staffing at the games, having enough players at games. It seems like it reminds me of Kalanji in the previous season, the spring season. If they did focus on getting results in the division, I think they would prosper. I think they would go farther. But I don't see any signs that it's going to be any different than last season. I could be proven wrong. They have the potential, but if they approach the season the same as they did last season, with the improvement in the other teams, they could be threatened with relegation in this coming season. So anything can happen, but I think that's a team that's going to have to prove themselves going forward. We'll have to wait and see if they take the division a little bit more serious this season.
And then finally, last two teams that are actually going to flip-flop. So in the fall season, FC Atlanta, they made it. They stayed out of relegation. SSLFC were in the top relegation zone. FC Atlanta has chosen to want to go down to Division One instead of staying in Premier, which is going to allow SSL to stay in
Yeah.
Premier for the fall or for the spring season. You can talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting case. You don't often have a team that, although they survived in the Premier, they asked to be relegated to Division One, and there's a very specific reason as to why FC Atlanta wants to do that, and it has to do with the goals of the club. Javier Ferreira has done a great job putting this team together. They've struggled the past 2 seasons to really compete, but they do that because they have a very young team, and they have a team that is talented. But when you're going up against the Georgia Revolution, Kalonji Pro Profiles of the league, Dalton United, those are really, really big powerhouses. And so they really want to reorganize their club, and they feel like they can do it better in Division One. So they're gonna, it's a little bit less stress on financially, a little less stress standards wise, but it allows them to bring those youth players through, get a little bit more experience, and then challenge for promotion again. So hats off to Javier for doing that, Coach Javier in FC Atlanta, which of course gives a lifeline and a blessing to SSL FC, who did end up in the relegation zones. They were going down to Division One, but this change, FC Atlanta choosing to go down, has allowed them to stay up. Of course, SSL is somewhat related, although they're a different club than Kalanji Pro Profile. They're from that club, and so they're going to be really wanting to do probably what North Georgia did last season. They were gifted, the berth to stay into the Premier. So they have a lot of potential talent there, talent pool that's related to the KSA Academy. And so they may want to make a statement this coming season and do something and move towards those playoff places. But I think it's going to be a struggle for them given the competition is out there. But FC Atlanta, they're going to be one of the favorites to come right back up through the promotion process if they continue on the way they do. So that'll be a team to watch in Division One in the spring 2025 season. And one other note here, of course, Atlantic City, as we know, we'll touch on that right quick. They withdrew from the division midway through the season last season. They are pretty much banned from coming back through those actions. But a team that I'm sad to say had a lot of potential. I mean, the concentration on youth, I thought was a good idea with that club. Of course, they recently won the division playoffs 2 seasons ago, and could have built on that, but they did not. They regressed. They went in the other direction to the point where now they're no longer a part of the UPSL in any capacity, not Division One, not Premier, not even the Academy, which they were going to be in. So it's a sad story, sad ending to them. But those players that are there have the opportunity to go other places, and we've seen that they have done so. Um, with Jimmy Noel going to Portros and really, contributing to their division fight for the title. So that'll continue, and so there's somewhat of a silver lining, so to speak, in that story. So it'll be good to see who comes up instead. Of course, we got the 3 teams that have come up from Division One, 2 through the promotion process, and then 1 through the defection of legends not coming back and Vino Tinto being removed for violations to the division as well. So it's big shakeups, man, and interesting and compelling stories, interesting and compelling competition. So it's going to be interesting as we close out that fall season, get ready right away for the spring season.
Absolutely. You touched on the last two teams that we were going to talk about. Normally, we would talk about hits and misses, but we can move forward in regards to just flat misses. And those two were Vinotinto Atlanta and Atlanta City FC, with
Yeah,
Coach Joao just deciding that he felt he was wronged and took everybody out of the competition and just destroyed Atlanta City FC. They're gone,
yeah,
no more, and so much potential in so many players. And then you look at something like Vinotinto, who had a really good regular season and then lost their head in the playoffs and are now absolutely removed from competition in a lot of different ways.
yeah. I mean, I have to say, I'm most as bad as the situation with Atlanta City was. You could tell that they were regressing, and so that it's not such a surprise with them. The Vino Tinto one is the one that hurts me personally because this is a team that had previous problems with fighting. They've been having a problem in other leagues before they came to the UPSL for the same reason. But they had turned things around. Orlando Lopez had done a great job with that club. I think he's a good guy. Um, Unfortunately, this game is an emotional game, and in the playoffs against North Georgia United, they lost the discipline to the point where referees were in danger and police were called, and you just can't have it at this level. This is not a rec league or a Sunday league, and being a member of the United States Soccer Federation, once you have referees that are threatened in a game or attacked in any way, whether it's verbal or otherwise, those reports go to the federation, and that can affect the certification of your league. So you have to take action against those types of things regardless of what they've been able to accomplish up until this point. And so the league did that because the UPSL takes very seriously these types of behaviors, and unfortunately for them, they had to be removed for this conduct. And these things were warned. All teams know what the details are of these types of situations, and you lose your head a little bit and get yourself involved where authorities are called and stuff. You don't really have a defense at that point. And so, unfortunately, that is one of the two big misses, like you say, in this past season with Atlanta City, uh, in my mind, not needing to remove themselves, and then the Vino Tinto, as well as they did all season, got into the playoffs. We're in first place at one point in the season last season. Vino Tinto was, and just missed out on those top spots, but then lost all discipline in the playoffs, and that can happen. I mean, I feel for them. I hope they find a way to get back in to the division. They have a pathway back, and it involves being revetted by the club and dealing with the penalties that they have. But they have a lifeline, unlike Atlanta City.
Yeah, and then we then move on to what was the national playoffs for the fall season. We got to cover everything all the way to Elite Eight, which means we got to see Soda City make that run all the way through. Got to go to Columbia, South Carolina, and watch them defeat Kalanji Pro Profile, and then they just moved right on through, defeated Florida, got that Southeast region title, moved on, got through the qualifier, made it to the finals, took down FC Folsom 4-2, a team that was really similar to them, but this
Yeah,
really impressed with Soda City. They make history, back to back national champions. Raul Salifu was amazing throughout the run. A little tip of the cap for me, knowing that he's a SKC guy from last season. Thanks to our good buddy Jason Longshore giving me that little piece of info. But the entire that entire squad, like they would go down and immediately score and get it back level, and they fought. They did real, and then Hakeem, he did fantastic. You gotta mention the toothless assassin,
Yeah.
which I've never called that in my days. Have I been a part of a match? And Jason said it on the call, and Jessica and Maddie as well. You never seen a man lose a tooth in a match and continue to play and refuse to be withdrawn. And we also remiss ASMG TV first broadcast in UPSL history with two women on the call. Also, Soda City, first team ever to have back-to-back championships. So we had a pretty good fall season. What do you think?
Oh, I think so, and hats off to Soda City. I mean, two seasons in a row they came to play Kalanji Pro Profile, a team that I had picked over them in both those games, and they did the business. But an incredible thing about Soda City is the resilience that they had. Like as you mentioned before, when you see somebody perform the way Hakeem Martin did, I mean, he lost two teeth by the way, and had a fracture under his gum, and he continued to play in that game. And so now he's still getting medical attention for that as he get into it, but he just kept on going, which is a testament to the way the team plays. You know, they go down many times in these games, in the playoff games. They go to extra. How many times did we see them? I lost count how many times they went to extra time and pulled it out, whether they did spot kicks or just won it outright in injury time or extra time rather, and they just never stop. They're relentless, and I think Folsom, who were playing against them, it looked for a moment that they were going to pull that out as a victory, and so the city looked done and dusted there towards the last part of that championship game, and they came back, forced extra time, and then scored two there in extra time from the toothless assassin, and it's quite a story. And quite frankly, they're going to be favorites again going into into the spring 2025 season. They're not going to lose much. They're probably going to get stronger. So we're creating quite the rivalry here. And I know that Coach Bruno Kalanji is going to want another crack at them if they can qualify to get to the national playoffs. So what a fantastic, not only for our division but for the entire league this past fall season, and I think it could be even more intense coming into the spring 2025 season.
It's kind of like what we've said in the past here in the Georgia division when it came to Dalton because they won so many titles. It's like I can't root against them until somebody can beat them, and that's where it is with Soda City. Right now, they're at the top of the crown until someone can take them down. I mean, they went undefeated this fall season. They weren't even supposed to be in the national playoffs in the spring season out of just luck that the two teams above them decided not to compete. They took that chance. They ran with it. We got to cover a couple of those matches. Got to go to Tennessee and cover that beautiful match that went to overtime up there. And I mean, it was just amazing to see what they've produced. I mean, they were even stronger in the fall than they were in the spring. What can they do next spring?
Yeah, and it's interesting too. You talk about two different seasons where, because in the division playoffs, they didn't win the division playoffs. They lost it at the last bit, but they still qualified, much like our division was. We had two spots that went to the national playoffs, so they were able to advance that way, and they just, you know, never give up. That's why you can't count them out anytime that you see them, whether they're in the division playoffs there in the Mid Atlantic division or in the national playoffs. They're going to, like you say, with Dalton, like we've said so many seasons before in the Georgia Conference, until somebody beats them, they're going to be the favorite. And so they're going to be an exciting team to watch and follow, just like the teams that we have in our own division. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and we have a massive spring that we're getting ready for. We'll talk more about the spring as we come along. 14 teams in the Premier ready to go. Not to mention 20 teams in Division 1.
Yeah, and I'll just say that for something, I think we alluded to it a little bit. We did have teams come up from Division One, and just to let you know, Pachuca, Georgia, is one of the teams. Laminio, Georgia, came up. Those both those teams came up by the competition, by the Division One playoffs. Well, of course, Pachuca won the division, and Laminio came up, and then of course FC Columbus. They qualified as the next available team that qualifies for coming into the Premier based on the removal of Vino Tinto directly. So they and they were kind of hard done in the fall season because the the tiebreaker was head to head instead of goal difference, but it wasn't applied at the time they were put into the playoffs. They should have had a first round bye, and they didn't, and they lost the Division One playoff in the first round. So, in a sense, this is justice for them to be placed in Premier to replace Vino Tinto. And those are those situations that are done by case by case situations when we have an event like that happen in Premier where we lose an extra team that's not relegated. There's a chance that either we'll go with a vacant spot for the next season, or if there's a team like FC Columbus Elite, that they'll be allowed to take that spot as a third promoted spot. So all very interesting, and we'll see how they do. Will they be able to compete with the top runners, or will they try to struggle against relegation? We'll have to wait and see for sure.
And that'll do it for this episode of Center Circle Podcast, and we'll come back here soon. We'll talk about the spring season, what to expect, because, like Dre was saying, many changes coming this spring. So get ready. So, Larry Weaver, Andre Bomar, thank you for watching Center Circle Podcast here on ASMG TV. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time here on ASMG TV.